I'm wearing the same sweater.
You are. You're wearing the same outfit as last.
It's been
recording.
washed. It's been washed. But
yeah, because you spent all day on laundry yesterday.
Yes.
That's why we're recording today. So you
and
can
I wasn't
wash
sure if
your
I should
sweatshirt.
dry it. Yeah, I wasn't sure if it could go in the dryer. This thing's like older than I am, so I'm sure it could. I'm sure it's been in the dryer before, but I was so stressed about it because I was like, this is vintage.
Yeah. This is from 1980.
Pretty much. I mean, I think it is actually from the 80s.
Yeah, it looks like it.
I know. And so I was like, if this shrinks, I'll kill myself.
Yeah.
So I had to hang it to dry. And so now that it's evening, it's finally dry enough that I can put it on.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Sweater weather. Oh my gosh, it was so rainy today and foggy. And
so
like
jealous.
You can see like the fog like over the buildings, like some kind of painting. It was really cool. Whatever. I know.
It was like, it wasn't warm today, but it was sunny enough that like the cold wasn't really cutting it, if that makes sense. So yeah, I can't wait to live somewhere cooler.
Yeah, I can't wait for you either. Somehow you just always end up in the desert.
I know. And it's frustrating because like I don't handle heat well. It just makes me want to sleep. It's so bad, it drains me.
It's awful.
I think that's why I did so well in London. I was like, where are those energy levels? How did those just plummet? How did I lose them so quickly?
Yeah, definitely.
But it's also soup weather.
Yes.
So today I picked up like I made this squash soup a couple weeks back, and not to brag, even though I think I finally convinced myself that they weren't lying about it, but Taylin and Vinny seem to really enjoy the soup. Yeah. So I'm gonna make that again tomorrow. It was pretty good.
Nice.
Yeah.
I love squash soup. I make this butternut squash curry soup.
Nice.
It's really fucking good. Nice. With like shredded chicken. Ugh, I make that every year. It's so good. Yeah. Yes. Another soup. This is like a recipe from my mom. All I used to call it was like the chicken and rice soup. I think that's what it is. Yeah. But it's just like shredded chicken, tomato chunks sometimes, tomato sauce, like thrown in, and then you like throw in rice with it. Yeah. Good shit. Yeah. Good shit. It's everything you need. I know. Tomato, rice, and chicken. Yeah, exactly. That's like the main ingredients in like half of the world's culture. Yeah. Exactly. So just hitting all your bases. Yeah. I'm actually, now that I'm saying it out loud, I'm so excited to make that soon. So your stomach is rumbling. Oh yeah. I used to I made it in London, and I think this is the earliest in the season I've ever made it, because I made it in like September because it was cool enough that you could. Yeah. You like moved there. It was like kind of cold, and you're like, holy shit, it's winter. Yeah. It's like, it's like 90 degrees in Phoenix. Fall in London is just winter in Arizona. Yeah. So my body was ready. Yeah. Your body was like, ready. What is this? Yeah. Yeah. So that's fun. Yeah. Well, we're talking about Two Towers today. Yes. I'm so excited. This is my favorite of the three. Yeah, that's right. You did your homework and watched it. Yes, I did my homework over the past 10 years of watching it every year, pretty much. So yes, yeah. Or probably more than that. Just wait till next episode when we talk about Return of the King. But I have seen this one a lot. And I got the extended edition and would watch like all the extras and like, so I'm glad you got to watch that, so that me too. You know what I'm talking about sometimes. So I think we've talked about this before, but I actually haven't. I didn't see this when I was younger. I didn't see this until I was older, and so I had because I had to watch it for class. So hard. So I just got them on Amazon, and they were not the extended editions. So the ones that I personally own are not the extended editions. But my cousin actually, do I have it back here? Yes. My cousin Ryan let me borrow oh, nice. Yep. Oh, it's so nice. Yes. I have the ones, they look like a, map. Cool. Yeah. I love the map. I love it when they look like books. It's so fun.
Yes.
Makes me happy. The ones I have, I don't know where they are. I think they're, no, we have them. They're not here because, you know, I live in a shoebox.
Yes.
But they're like, they look like leather. And Fellowship is dark green. Two Towers is like a reddish tan.
And then is the last one blue?
Yeah, Return of the King's like a blue.
My uncle gave those to my mom.
Nice.
Yeah.
They're so good. I love it. So I learned a lot about because a lot of the behind the scenes stuff is like all of the producers and then people who also just like are, you know, researchers on Tolkien and Middle Earth, like talked about the books as well, and him and C.S. Lewis and stuff. So I like learned a lot about that.
Yeah. Well, I was excited because like I think I've only seen the extended editions like once or twice.
It's also hard because it's hard because I've had them for so long that I don't necessarily know which scenes weren't.
Yeah.
I do know of a few, the one you were talking about a little bit earlier, which we're going to get into, but there's also the one where, no, that's not an extended scene. So yeah, like I don't really.
Well, the most
when
recently
you talk
I've watched
about it, I'll be like, oh yeah, okay.
Yeah, I might, as we're talking, I might be able to pick out some of the other extended scenes,
right?
But it's definitely like, oh, sorry, something in my eye. It's definitely a fuller movie. Like, I knew that the extended editions were better, even going in not having seen them when I was first watching like the normal ones, but I didn't know quite how, especially with the scene that we'll get into, which this isn't like a secret. We know that if we start talking about it, we're going to get too deep. And so we need to pace ourselves.
Yes.
But it completely changes like the reading of those characters, which I love. And it sucks that they didn't put them more properly in the movie.
Yeah.
They being like, whatever forces that be decided to release the shorter version.
Right. They were like, we don't need this.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they're long movies.
Yeah.
Already. They're like 2 hours, more than 2 hours long with extended. Like, they're very long. So I can understand that, like, in a theater.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, for sure. I think it needs to be like some of the Star Wars stuff where it's like you can't actually get the original cut of like certain scenes because George Lucas just like came in and changed it all, and it's not published in the same way anymore. Like that's how we need to treat some of these shorter versions. Just stop putting them out. Just only put out the extended editions.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Well, I told Milo, I said, okay, we're talking about Two Towers today. What should we talk about? And he's like, well, this is the one that has all of the lines in it. It's got, they're taking the hobbits to Isengard. And what do your elven eyes see?
And potatoes.
And taters precious. And meat's back on the menu, boys. Like,
which, how do they even know what a menu is?
I know. Tell me about it. And that's where it was like, I felt it was, it's like that and like those like stupid, like, action, moments that like Legolas has and stuff sometimes where you're like, okay, like, is this a superhero movie or is this like, you know what I mean? And that's
like,
the
I'm
thing.
already on 17. Like, ow.
I mean, sometimes it's cute. Like sometimes it's cute, like humor and stuff. And like even Game of Thrones kind of had a little bit of that, but it was like, how do they know what a menu is? And also like, like, I know this is the next movie, but there's that scene where Legolas like
he's getting on the elephant.
No.
Oh, okay,
is
sorry.
This it? Or is this, maybe this is Two Towers. I can't remember. It might be Two Towers. Where he's getting on the horse and he like doesn't take eye contact off of the camera. Like,
he just swings around. And I'm like, okay, I get that he might be physically capable of doing this theoretically, but this is a horse in the middle of running.
Yeah.
So what you're telling me is that he also put absolutely no force,
but also
his like bullying.
It reminded me of like a mechanical ride.
Oh God.
You know, like it actually looked, it doesn't look like ergonomic
yes,
like sound. Like he's just kind of like,
especially because they do it like slow-mo.
Like, yeah.
Like I think it's like
so it shows it so much worse. Although I think if they did it in real time, it would actually probably look more choppy. That's probably why they slowed it down. Yeah, I don't know.
That would make sense.
But anyway, I think, is that Two Towers?
I think so.
No, I think it's the third one because it's the new orc guy with the white head.
Yes, it is. So it is the third one.
We're out of our breath here, but anyways, yeah, like that.
But yes,
like the one-liners stuff, that kind of style is.
We also did, like last time we talked about how good the effects are, considering like when the movie came out, and I had completely forgotten this because there's a good side and then a bad side to say.
Yeah.
The good side is the height difference between all of these like creatures, when really they're like all men of generally the same height. Like that's something that very rarely is put into question. But then there's the scene when Merry and Pippin are about to escape. Meat is back on the menu, boys scene. It's one of the few scenes where you actually like very vividly see the hobbits standing next to men. And I just remember thinking like they really nailed it because it happens at night. And so
that's harder.
It's easier because a lot of the details that you like, that your eyes will pick out and your brain will pick out when there's like big effects and stuff, if it's at night and they're all just vaguely dark, you can't tell quite as well.
Yeah.
And so I was like, the one, like, of course they choose this scene to do it. It's very well done.
Yeah.
Especially like like immersively when you're thinking about kind of like that like suspension of disbelief. I don't know why I put quotes around that. It doesn't get quotes because of the suspension of disbelief.
Because it's a thing.
There's a very fine line, especially as like modern viewers of fantasy, like we're talking about with Meat's Back on the Menu, or like a little bit too aggressive like superhero action movie kind of sequences. Like even with Game of Thrones, is like sometimes you get references, or you'd have like Ed Sheeran show up, which like not that he's like a bad actor, but like it's Ed Sheeran. But
it's like it breaks the immersion.
Yeah, exactly. So like the suspension of disbelief like breaks, but they never really do that with the size of the hobbits. It's always very well done.
Yeah.
A not fun thing that hasn't aged well is when Frodo falls into that swamp and you get like the ghouls that are like coming up to him.
Mirkwood or whatever it is.
I can't remember what it's called, but it's like
it's the Death Marshes.
Yes, yeah,
that's what they're called. Terrifying.
Because you can tell like it looks flat up against like the background of the water. Like it doesn't look like it's moving through the water. It's just so bad. That's one of a couple of times where it looks really terrible.
Well, you said that for the first one too, like the underwater stuff's like really bad.
I think that's what I was thinking of. And it's in this movie.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, because it's when Sam falls in the water.
Yeah.
Like they're like the dimensions are off.
Yeah.
Just totally off.
It's fine.
But it is yeah, exactly. Like it happens like twice in the entire trilogy. Like it could have been a lot worse.
It's a good thing there's no mermaids in Middle Earth.
Oh God. As far as we know, but yeah. Yeah, okay. So I think this time we're gonna get a little deeper into some of these conversations.
Yeah. I think we're gonna talk about capitalism.
I'm laughing, but it's true.
You're like, so she has printed notes, everyone.
Yeah, let me if you're watching the video version. They're printed in blue because we ran out of ink.
And she's like, so I want to talk about Saruman industrialization. And I'm like, oh, okay.
That's like the first thing.
This is the class we came to. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. This is what I've been waiting for.
I'm excited. I'm excited that you're pumped and you're like, I'm here for the ride.
It was sad
I'll
that
bring
I like
the charm.
This. You've got plenty.
Yeah.
Okay.
Before we get into more serious topics though.
Yeah.
There's this like another thing Milo was like, and everyone brings up the scene when Aragorn kicks the helmet and they're all like, did you know that he broke his toe and that scene. And when he screams and falls to his knees, he's screaming because of the pain, and he just stayed in character. And then you're supposed to be like, what? No, I didn't know that.
God. Wait, do it again. I'll be ready this time. I'll be ready this time.
Okay. No, I mean, like, that's just, everyone thinks they're giving you like telling you the thing you don't know, and everyone knows it from like whatever the extended scenes. But
and I love the fact that like they're like, he stayed in character. It's like, because you don't need to be in character to like scream when you broke your toe. Like,
yeah,
he was screaming as Vigo. He just didn't have a line right there.
Yeah.
If you had a line, maybe it would have been different.
There's this really funny like YouTube video Milo like shared me, and it's just this guy doing like watching Lord of the Rings with your annoying friend, and it's just all of these things that everyone says when they're watching Lord of the Rings, and that was one of them, and it just made me laugh. There's a lot of things.
It makes me think of Colin Robinson from What We Do in the Shadows. He's always got the like. So did you know?
Yeah.
Yep.
Exactly.
I'm that person with Jaws, actually.
Did you know I went to Cape Cod?
No.
Yeah.
No, I did, because you said you went to the Cape.
Yeah, the Cape. Did I say it like that? I went to the Cape.
That's what I imagined in my head.
I took my mom to the Cape because my mom is that person that's like, well, we have to go to the Cape. I have to say I went to the Cape. And I'm like, Mom, it's like October.
Yeah.
And it's, it's rich people land. And then we went though, and it was, I had never really actually seen the Atlantic. I've seen like Florida Atlantic, which is different, I think.
It's a lot warmer.
It was kind of, so I was kind of like, oh, it's like a really nice beach. The sand is different. So anyways, yes, we went to the Cape. What were you talking? Yes. And that's where it was, filmed. Jaws.
Yes. Yeah. Classic.
I remember
unrelated to this though.
Watching that when I was 10 years old and crying. That was
like the only scary movie I could watch as a kid.
Yeah. I could watch Jaws, but I couldn't watch Titanic.
Oh my God.
My fear of sharks is okay, but not sex. And it's not even sex.
No.
It's a hand.
And a moving car.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The logic.
The funny thing is, like, I'm really scared of the ocean. Like, total like Edmund Burke status, like the sublime, like it physically, like the incomprehensibility of the ocean is what terrifies me. I can watch Jaws though. It's pretty good.
Yeah. Do you remember Blue Planet when you'd like go underwater with them?
Yeah.
I'd be like, fine if it's blue. But once it's not blue anymore and it gets dark, I'm like,
then you're like,
I don't need to see this. Yeah. I don't need to know that this exists.
Yeah.
They got the little flashlight and you're like,
it's like, we get it. We've all seen Finding Nemo.
Yeah.
That's all I need.
We all know it's shit down there. Like,
yes.
Oh, and octopuses. Octopi, whatever. I think they're really cool. Like, I actually, like, in theory, think octopuses are probably the coolest animal in the world, but I don't ever want to see one. Yep. And I don't ever want to believe that they're real. Like, like, kind of like,
That's just not where I was expecting that to go.
I just like, well, they're kind of a mythical creature that that I can pray to, but I don't need, I don't need them to like be real.
Like the next time you go to the Cape, you're going to pray for protection from the octopuses. They're just scary. No, I like when I see them like at aquariums, cool as shit. When I see them in like Blue Planet or like on TV where it's like 10,000 feet under the sea, pitch black, and then just like boom, a thing like nope, not happening. Like
no. Like I think part of it is you don't know the scale.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's very unsettling. You don't know where the ground is. Like you can't see anything. It's eerily cold. Like it's cold.
Yep.
Anyways, two towers.
Well, that was one of the I think that was one of the things, because like Burke talks about, we're just gonna get into some classics real quick. When in Burke's book, Beautiful and the Sublime, that's not the full title because it was written in the 18th century, and it's like 20 words long.
An inquiry to the sublime and beautiful and whatever.
Yes.
Something like that.
Semicolon and blah, 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 blah. Yeah. When he has his section where he talks about the ocean, one of the things he talks about is like the size and like the fact that you physically cannot comprehend how big it is.
Yeah.
Like you can know in theory, but like when you say like something's 3 feet away and you look at that point, it gets like explicitly like warped in the water. So 3 feet away is not like what you typically perceive to be 3 feet away. And then it just gets worse the bigger and the deeper it gets. And I'm not about it. It's gotten worse as I've gotten older though. Like I remember swimming in the ocean as a kid and I'm like, God, those were the days. I
can't swim in anything if I can't see through it.
That's fair. When I say swim loosely, like I went up to my waist.
I used to be like there's this man-made lake that we used to swim in and it was just brown, you know? It's kind of gross. You're just like, whatever. You fucking put your head under. You're like, whatever. You're like a kid. You like pee in it. Like, you'd be like warm spot. And then like, And now I'm just like, I can't see my toes. Like,
oh God. Yeah. Okay. So just to continue this digression, we also have a man-made lake. This was in Phoenix. It's called Lake Pleasant. And it literally they just like filled it in and they put a dam in, but they filled in over like a park, what used to be a national park. So there's just like apparently, and I don't know how true this is. So if somebody lives in Phoenix and you know better, please tell me, please like save my brain. So there's just like abandoned buildings and like parking, like not structures, like, you know, like the metal things. Like that you would put like the bike racks, like the ones you park your bike at in public spaces, like things like that just down at the bottom. But when you're in the water, like this one is undeniable. Like in Lake Pleasant, the water, you can't see. The last time I went into it, I am 5.5 feet tall. I could not see below my knees.
Yeah.
So I mean, like I'm up to here, I'm floating. Everything from here to my knees, visible. Yeah. And then you just couldn't see anything else past that. I couldn't see my feet. And I think I almost cried.
Yeah. Yeah. I get panicky. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like, it's not like a sobbing. It's just like, it's like Burke describes, where it's like, you get so overwhelmed with this inability to think about it, to like wrap your mind around it, that your brain is just like, we're just going to cry now.
Yeah.
That's all we can do.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I will not be going there ever again, but also fuck the ocean.
Fuck the ocean.
Yep.
Yeah. Like
I respect the ocean. I deeply respect the ocean.
Yeah. You
don't want to touch it.
What one must fear the ocean. That is a necessary thing. There's this restaurant called Ocean Grill, and I'm like, that sounds disgusting.
Yeah.
Like obviously it's a seafood grill, but Ocean Grill, like that, I don't know why that just like really
I'm not a
like
seafood person.
I'm not either, but like
I think that might be why.
But like it probably is, but there's something about Ocean Grill that just sounds so bad. Like,
yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. I don't know what it is either. I can't put my finger on it, but I agree.
It should not be. Anyways.
Yeah.
Back to the Two Towers.
Which has no ocean in it,
detour,
thankfully.
And no ocean. Yes. I think that's why we got here. We were like, no ocean. Fuck the ocean.
Yeah. Okay. One of the things that I really like is the way Sam's character shifts in this one. In the first one, he was like very wholeheartedly like sidekick. He's kind of just like pattering at the heels of Frodo. He's being a nice friend. But this movie is where it turns more solidly towards the importance that Sam plays in their quest. Because like is it the opening scene? It's part of the opening scene. It's after like the whole flashback of what happened to Gandalf. And Sam, like, he's like, catch that. And he catches it. And it's like the salt and the pepper. And he's like, this is the best salt from South Farthing or wherever it's from. I think South Farthing is where the weed is from.
Right.
And like Frodo just kind of like, he looks at him like so lovingly, and you do see that change slightly in Frodo as time goes on, even though he doesn't want it to. But like that moment is why Sam is so important. Like the salt, like he's keeping the Shire alive for Frodo.
There's something that kind of ties Two Towers and Return of the King together as kind of its own thing, and that's Frodo and Sam's relationship, because that's the last thing he reminds him of on Mordor is like home. And Fellowship, there's just a lot going on about like figuring out what the quest is, and we know they're kind of friends, but this is like, okay, it's very singular like arc for them. Good boy.
Especially because this is we both want to talk about Gollum, and I think this kind of ties into it though, is like the very clear conflict that happens between Gollum and Sam in their quest to be Frodo's right-hand man. So Sam more firmly puts his foot down, and it's not just that like how like it's not just that he doesn't like Gollum, because like granted his treatment of Gollum like is very aggressive, but it's that he recognizes the threat that Gollum plays, because as like it's weird, because on the one hand you feel bad for Gollum because you can see Frodo feeling bad for Gollum. But if he gives into that, and I think Sam realizes this, like if he gives into that too fully, he risks turning into that as well.
I feel like it kind of shows the dimensions of Sam a little bit. Obviously he recognizes Gollum as a threat. Frodo just becomes like kind of this passive bag. It's like he just becomes cargo. And Sam is still a bit of you can help me find the word, not a traditionalist or not conservative, because like he has kind of a certain kind of convention around like the Shire, like that's home. He wants to go back home. He's not interested in like so much of the adventure. Like he's excited when he sees Oliphants, but like he gets really nasty with Gollum because of what, I don't know.
Gollum's like a threat to their way of life.
Exactly. Like, and like, this is a Hobbit gone bad.
Literally.
And so it's kind of a symbolic to like the threat to the Shire. Gollum is a literal representation of the threat of the ring on the Shire and Hobbiton. And
I would argue that like in their dynamic,
the innocence
like
of being
the
a
three
Hobbit.
of them, Sam is like a symbol for the Shire itself.
Yeah, exactly.
So that makes sense.
So it's kind of good that he doesn't that Sam doesn't stay this like kind of perfect angel. Like I kind of like that there's a little bit of depth there, and he has kind of his own thing.
Because a lot of times, like, and I can understand why, but like a lot of times the hobbits get really infantilized. And I think this movie, all four of them really firmly show how wrong that is. Because you've got like Sam, who's willing to defend his home and like in this symbol that is Gollum. And then you've got like Merry and Pippin, who kind of single-handedly help defeat Sauron by just like, oh no, I think you should actually go south. He'll never expect that. And just to make sure that they would like run into what he kind of suspected being there. And so it really proves how integral they are to the war at hand. The war that's barely started but is gaining traction.
Definitely.
They're a lot stronger than they look.
They're hardy.
Yes. But I do kind of want to explore the treatment that Gollum / Smeagol gets in this film, because this is the one where he, for a period of time, vanishes Gollum from his consciousness, and he just becomes Smeagol for a little while. But we are like very clearly presented with two options of how to treat him. You've got like the pity from Frodo, and then the aggression from Sam. And I find it interesting that like it doesn't really feel like there's a wrong or a right answer to how we're expected to feel about Gollum.
Yeah. I like that it's kind of open-ended.
Yeah.
Because I think, correct me, I don't think the book really fleshes this out. Gollum. I feel like Gollum's more of symbolic of something. Yeah. But he's not a dimensional character.
Yeah, I don't think so.
So I think this was very much a liberty that was taken, and I think very well.
Yes.
And Gollum became my favorite part of the movie. I mean, I loved like Gollum's song at the end.
Yeah.
And how it ended, just like really like eerie and mysterious, and like they're just like disappearing into the wood. And you're like,
yes, yeah.
It was kind of horror filmy. But I think a lot of what film and art is kind of leaning more towards and we can see this especially with Game of Thrones now, is the dichotomy in people and villains and the scapegoat that there's like, it's always been there, but like it's always been shown in art, but not
it's just
in like
being explored more.
It's being explored in like the front now more. Main characters are becoming darker.
Yeah.
Villains are becoming more sympathetic, things like
that. Not to be like bringing Marvel back into this, but like there's a lot of argument because they just had they just launched phase 4 and they had 2 big shows. Well, I think they had 3 now, but like one of them was Loki, which is based off what has been presented to us as a villain for the most part. But the fan base alone pretty much revived him as this kind of anti-hero. Just through like sheer force of will and love for Tom Hiddleston.
Yeah.
But also you've got WandaVision, and there's like a lot of argument within like the fan base about whether or not she should be considered a villain. And I like that because in some ways I almost would consider her a villain, even though she's for the most part worked on the side of the heroes. But because if we look at it then as like them giving this space, like an 8-episode great series to a villain, to making us feel pity for this villain, I love that we're like exploring that more fully. Yeah. It's not just like a dying breath where it's like, but my daughter, and you're like, oh no, the villain had dementia and now they're dead. It's like they're fully fleshed out.
Yeah. Yeah, so. They're the hero in their own story.
Yeah. But we also get to see their own story. Yeah, it's not just like an empty line, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, you really get to know Smeagol, because really you're met with Gollum at first. And there's just like these, which I feel like is very, like you were kind of saying, like hobbits are kind of infantilized, and I can specifically think of moments that would suggest that in Frodo and Merry and Pippin and Sam and Smeagol.
Yes, yeah.
So you get to see this kind of like this hobbit in him when he's like singing the so juicy sweet, and he's just like, he's just like sliding around the river with his
the
hunting
forbidden
for fish.
Waterfall. Yeah.
Well, just like there's that part. Yeah, I forgot. But there's the part where like he's kind of in the background, and like Sam and Frodo are like whatever, and he's just like playing with the fish like in the water, and it's like this really like sweet moment, like innocent moment.
And I love that. I actually hadn't thought about that in terms of like the hobbitness of him.
Mm-hmm.
But it makes sense because one of the biggest like songs in the first movie is, I can't remember, was it Frodo dancing on top of the table at the bar pub that they made it to, and he's singing his bar song and he's just like hopping and everything. It's like that's just like kind of a demonized almost version of what the hobbits like to do regularly.
Yeah.
Singing with their dinner, dancing a little jig because their bodies can't take it and they need to get that out.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like that's what, that's, I had never thought about that before, but yeah.
Yeah. And I didn't make that connection, but that's good. But I just feel like he was very much more humanized.
Yeah.
And they used his hobbitness to do that. Mm-hmm. And I think it made sense because here now you're watching Frodo go the other way. And so it's like this kind of like, and Frodo's going towards what Gollum is.
Yeah.
And Sam's trying to ground. So there's like that juxtaposition of like Smeagol kind of like becoming more Hobbit-like and Sam rejecting that.
Yeah.
And Sam being the symbol of Hobbiton and
yeah.
Kind
of I find it funny how like even as Gollum's kind of gaining those more Hobbit-like features, Sam still rejects him. But like because he also recognizes that as nice as Smeagol might want to be, there's only so far he can go. He's been so warped by the ring that like Sam does on some level realize that it's not possible for him to go further. He's like, you can fake it all you want, but I also know that it's not real, which is true because how many centuries did he spend in the dark cave with that ring getting just like completely changed by it? Like, yeah, he might spend like a few weeks without Gollum in his mind, but that's after how many years?
Another theory is that Gollum let Smeagol out a little bit to appeal. I can see that. To appeal to them. Yeah. And Gollum was really able to, because we see that at the end when he's doing, the back and forth. It's like, obviously Gollum won the battle there. But I think he was trying to like appeal to Frodo that could have been it. And really, because you're right, like centuries, Smeagol's not just going to all of a sudden overturn.
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially when the ring's right there.
Exactly. Like, exactly.
That's the ultimate manipulation, which is another layer of sad.
It is. Yeah.
Because then you see Smeagol, this hobbit, just like getting scorched. Like,
yeah. And I think there's this level of like, we're just supposed to accept his treatment and his like condition because of the purpose he's going to serve.
Mm-hmm.
Because even like Gandalf on some level knows that he's meant to do thing.
Yes. There's the conversation to serve a purpose.
Yeah, there's the conversation that they have in Moria when Frodo has the line where he's like, "Oh, my Uncle Bilbo should just put him out of his misery when he had the chance." And part of like what Gandalf's the core of his response is, "Don't be so eager to deal out death blows," basically. Yeah. But also like, you don't know. You don't have the power to understand why he might be still alive today. Just accept that he is.
Yeah.
And like we find out later is that he does serve a purpose.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's the obvious like I guess allegory, symbolism, metaphor for like addiction that he serves. And then you've got Frodo, who is trying to overcome that same addiction, but slowly falling into. And that's an interesting to look at Sam's treatment of Gollum, because then when he sees Frodo being more considerate towards him, what he also sees is Frodo maybe not recognizing the problems in Gollum and Smeagol's behavior quite as diligently.
Yeah, like, yeah, that's a good, would you say, metaphor for addiction, because at the end of the day, their addiction is always really going to kind of overcome every day. Like, well, you know, addicts will say that it's like something they have to deal with every single day. And here we are talking about centuries, and not only that, but the ring, which we already know what it's doing to Frodo in, like, you know, a year or whatever it is. So yeah, definitely. I definitely see that as well.
And then, like, I could see, like, us as viewers of the movie, and then also like audience readers of the book, just slowly over time reading Gollum's character differently.
Yeah.
Because when it was initially published, the rhetoric around addiction would have been far different than I think is more common nowadays. Not that it didn't exist, and not that Tolkien maybe wouldn't have also been like part of that conversation of like addiction is a disease, it's not their fault, like that kind of conversation. But I think that's a much more mainstream thought or mindset to have now.
Yeah, I definitely think it's something we're kind of putting on the movie version, because the movie version, like we said, is very much more fleshed out with Smeagol. I think Tolkien's purpose was more evil.
Yeah.
In a more kind of religious sense, I would say.
Yeah.
Which can be addiction, you know?
Yeah, exactly. So like in this one, we just get like a very physical sense of it. Very
exactly.
Physical,
very psychological one. Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
Cool.
Industrialization.
So the very, very obvious one is, and I love this monologue, but when we first, so it's after Wormtongue Grima has left Rohan, and he shows up, he's back at Saruman's, and he's like, but what are you gonna do? You'd have to have an army. And Saruman has this like monologue where he I think like the first line in it is, the old world will fall to industry. Yeah. Which like just fully sums up what the core of this like this conflict is between Saruman and Sauron, and then the Fellowship and everybody, man, the Age of Man and all that shit. But that was like intentional also, so that's not something that we're just like putting on the book from the movie. Like that was one of Tolkien's like intents with this book, was creating these fantastical, beautiful lands. We've got like Hobbiton, you've got all of the different Lothlorien, Mirkwood, but then contrasted with this like dark and smoky. And there's the scene, I think it's in this one, where I think it's actually in that scene where they go down into the caves and like give birth, like the wall gives birth to the orc.
They spawn, yeah.
And so it's like a very like, it's almost like Shelley-esque, where you've got this kind of
making of man
aberration made without like woman and man coming together. It's just like spawned out of the earth.
Yeah,
so like
in like in like a sack.
Like it's not even like they just like dug it out, like it was in like an amniotic sac of things, like disgusting, but also kind of showing this like aggressive kind of patriarchal push. So I did kind of like the gendering there, like the difference. You don't get female heroes on Sauron's side. No, you don't have an Eowyn, because, and not to I'm gonna cut ahead a little bit. the iconic line that Eowyn has where she says, "I am no man," which is in the books too. And I when I read them, I didn't expect it to be in there, but it was in the books. That's how they get around his prophecy, is that he could never have foreseen a woman defeating him like that. But this, like, the lack of the motherly within their space is almost part of like the corruptive force.
Oh, absolutely. There's no, I feel like I overuse the word representation, but there's no like, female space taking up. Like to make any kind of like, there's like 3 or 4 women in the whole series. Like if we're gonna include like Goldilocks.
Galadriel.
No, like even like what's her name? Goldie Locks? The gal Sam's Rosie, yeah. Rosie Locks. You know what I mean? Like who's not even really a character, but like that's like the 4th woman. You know what I mean? Like there's no women in this. Like it's
I don't even think do we see Lobelia? I think that's the thing, is like she's mentioned and then we see somebody that might be her, but it's never really like even like that is Lobelia.
I think the most women we see is in Helm's Deep.
Yes. And all of them are just terrified.
Yeah.
Rightfully so. Like, not that they shouldn't have been terrified, but it's very much painted as the damsels, the helpless.
But you were going to bring something up about women and hope.
Oh, yeah. So we can jump back to industrialization. I'll go back to that any day of the week.
I think we will. Yeah.
Yeah. But this movie, the sequel, this one specifically, we get lines from both Arwen and Eowyn that allude to like hope within their situation and like fighting for protection and everything, like in a much different tone than the men in the story do. Because like Arwen very explicitly says it. Let me see if I wrote down. Yes, so it's when we get a loose flashback, or I guess like what's happening right now, where we go to Elrond trying to convince her to leave with the boats, and he's like, there is no hope, and she just like looks him in the eye and she's like, there is always hope. And she's the force that we find in the next one that leads to him turning back to helping man, honoring those oaths and everything, even in this one, I think, because he's the one who sends that army to help at Helm's Deep, and it's because of what she said. But they do it for very different reasons than the men do. The men do it because of like principle. They do it because there's always hope. Like they are the driving force in that.
Women, it is a bit gendering, because women are the procurers of future.
Yes.
You know, we bear the next generation, we raise the next generation. We are the semblance of home and pleasure and safety and comfort, right? While the men go to war, which this is very, like, the series is very much a commentary on war. Like, as a whole. And so, men are very much about the present. They're very much about protection. Things like that. And so I think there's a bit of, there's just like a bit of gendering going on there, I would say. But I like that because that's a good message, hope. Like, and
I think it makes sense for the women within the women in the story who hold a role, period, to come with that message, because it gives the men almost something more to fight for. Like it reinstills that fight within them. So like Arwen for her father Elrond and Aragorn, but then also Eowyn does it in her interactions with her uncle, and in her interactions with Aragorn as well, where like you're seeing very explicitly like the kind of people that you're fighting for. Yes,
I love their relationship.
especially so like she doesn't like I don't think Eowyn has necessarily a line that I can think of off the top of my head. But after her uncle is freed from Sauron's grasp, and he's having to deal with the fact that he doesn't even really remember his son dying, he has exiled his nephew like involuntarily. She's the one who keeps it together. And even as much as she wants to fight, because I remember I just watched it 2 days ago, but like when they're on their way to Helm's Deep, they're about to get attacked, and Eowyn, like, she grabs her sword, she's about to fight with them, and Theoden turns back to her, and he's like, no, you don't fight today, you take them and you get to Helm's Deep and you get inside and you get locked up. And so, like, again, going back to what you were saying about like women are the future, they are the progenitors of that future, of that culture. He needs her alive because there is no confirmation that exactly, there's no confirmation that her brother is alive. His son has already died, and so she's the one who the responsibility has to fall on. And so he looks to her and he sees what he's like, literally, in the fact that he loves her, but also then like just generally, like, if I die, this is who people are going to follow. She needs to be alive.
Yeah. And I think as you were talking, I was thinking like Eowyn's very much the support. Yeah. Like in the war, like, you know, when they're around camp and she makes like the soup for Aragorn.
Yeah.
And then there's this part, I can't remember what it is, but I remember her just being like standing up for Merry to be able to like fight. And like, why can't he fight? You know, he has people to fight for as well. And so she has an interesting perspective in that she understands the life of a warrior and wants to be the warrior, but isn't able to, or given the opportunity to. And so she can understand. Whereas I feel like a lot of the women of that time probably wouldn't have. Like, like they wouldn't be able to handle it.
And I mean, they're fully setting her up to be like a great leader.
Yeah, exactly.
Because how do you expect her to be the leader of this like horse warrior people without having done that?
Yeah. And so you have Eowyn, who's like hands-on support. And then you have Arwen, who's like this vision of like the future, not only of, of like the future of the kingdom, because she ends up being the queen, of elven and man. So, it's unfortunate that there's not, I feel like, better female representation, but that's okay.
Yeah.
We'll take what we can
We've learned to live with it.
Yeah.
I was also going to jump ahead to the third one because I know we'll have plenty to talk about. So, but this is in the same vein, is that like arguably, so this, you're talking about her like saying that Merry should fight, also reminded me of this, is that like she does fight in the last battle and she just hides her identity. And so arguably it also becomes this kind of like figure of the invisible labor that women do to uphold current culture and current structures, involuntarily sometimes, but just like, I was having a conversation with Taylin about this earlier, because like Christmas stuff is all around, right? If you ask any mother what the most stressful time of year is for her, she will tell you it is Christmas.
Yeah.
And they don't, like, moms don't necessarily talk about it openly. They'll talk about it with each other because another mom will understand why. But like, I remember when I was younger, seeing how stressed my mom would get during the holidays, and I just wouldn't understand.
But it's supposed to be this like happy time of year. Yeah,
exactly. And so like we were listening to Christmas music on our way home from the grocery store earlier. But
wow.
I know it was pretty good. I enjoyed it. I do love Christmas music, but like it's enjoyable for me because I've never really had to do the kind of invisible labor that women do to maintain that kind of season that mothers and wives have to put through have to put forward in order to maintain that. And so when you get Éowyn, who turns the tides of that battle by being the woman who defeats the Witch King, who saves her uncle, or who at least like helps him so that they have a chance to say goodbye, because she was able to hide herself. She was only able to do it because she could hide herself.
Yeah. It's like behind closed doors.
Yeah, exactly.
Kind of
exactly.
Like undercover.
And that's the only way that like a woman within this story could give influence on something like that.
Yeah.
Arwen comes through as a healer a couple of times, but the scene where she's the one in the first one, I think I mentioned this, but like she is the one who like picks up Frodo and rides him all the way back to Lothlorien. Wait, is that Lothlorien?
Rivendell,
thank you. She's the one who rides him all the way back to Rivendell. That wasn't her in the books.
No.
And so even like the only active thing that she does in the movies was not even her.
Yeah, they needed to give her something to do to kind of get her character. But yeah, she's a princess.
Oh no, fully 100% through and through. And it's not that that's like a problem. I'm not saying that's
just her role. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it's like, it shows even like almost kind of further how secretive the women had to be about their help. Yeah. Because like Galadriel speaks silently into their minds. She doesn't speak it in front of everybody. She has to give all their gifts in secret, almost all of their second gifts, not like the cloaks and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
But they keep fighting. They keep the hope alive.
Yeah.
The symbol of another day.
Yeah. And then at the end, Sam gets Rosie.
He gets his Rosie. Yeah. Okay. Let me look at my notes. Oh, okay. So this is one of the reasons that I wanted to talk about Saruman. So we get the scene that starts with that monologue, right? But I'd never really listened to the words he says when he's trying to like rally all of those evil men to fight the Rohirrim, to burn down the villages of Rohan.
The Uruk-hai.
But he's like aggressively, like politically fear-mongering.
Yeah, he's from the behind the scenes. Christopher, what's his face? What's his name? Christopher. Shit. Christopher Lee. No.
Yes.
Is it?
Yes. Yeah.
He actually wanted to be Gandalf because I think he like met Tolkien or something.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
He was amazing.
Yeah.
He saw the last guillotine execution in France. If the internet isn't lying to me.
No, yeah. No, I was thinking about something else. It's okay. No, yeah. That's crazy.
Because that was in like the 80s or something, which is also just
the 60s.
Absurd.
60s, 70s, or 80s. Yeah, there was the last one. About. Yeah. Anyways, he was very much trying to be like Hitler in the way that he like
that makes sense
and everything because of that, like, or just like very Stalin, very Mussolini. Like,
it's funny because it reminded me of Trump.
Yeah,
because his words were like, well, not in the articulate, but like in the content of what he was saying in that specific scene, because he's like, they've taken your lands, they've shooed you out, and I was just like, this is exactly what Trump said about like Mexicans.
It really reminds me of and I know you haven't seen it, but it's in The Office where Dwight goes to like the sales convention because he's like the top salesman or whatever the company.
I know.
And Jim gives him like the speech from, is it Mussolini or Stalin?
I think so. I think it's Mussolini.
And he's like, we will. And he's just like, move your arms a lot and stuff. It's like that. Like, that's literally just like what he did on the top of that tower. Yeah. Like,
but he did it very well.
I loved too the moment when Wormtongue has like the tear.
Yes.
Like, because that is like that's sublime.
The sublime. Yes. I wrote that in here because he's not like, he doesn't blink. He's slack jawed and he just looks out. And I'm sure it was a movie, but like, let's pretend for a second it wasn't a movie.
This was real.
Looking out on like 10,000 men, they're all cheering, they're all yelling. You probably could have felt that in your chest.
Yeah.
Oh God, the guy who plays Wormtongue, that
so
shot
good.
alone, so good. He's also a very good actor.
He was amazing.
Yes.
Yeah, I was thoroughly impressed with him as like a villain. Like I really enjoyed him a lot.
Yeah.
I just think he was really cool. He was like even he would get kind of creepy with Eowyn.
Oh yeah.
Like, but it was like a weird, it wasn't necessarily sexual, but it was like, a lot of things. Like it was something different there. Like it was
he knows how to make it creepy without making it overtly sexual.
Yeah, exactly.
He was in an episode of X-Files that I watched recently, so season 1, where he plays like what's supposed to be a psychic. I mean, it's the X-Files, so it is real. It's just like nobody else believes but you and Fox.
Yeah.
But he really nailed it. It was a very good performance, but he would like get possessed by dead spirits or by people, and like he would like help them solve crimes to try to get off death row. And so he would just kind of like shift character like that because he's getting possessed now. And it was creepy, but at the same time kind of like awe-inspiring, the way that he was able to just like change all of his mannerisms and like his tone of voice. So he's very conscious of, like, as an actor, he's very conscious of like the way his body is being read.
Yeah.
He was also, I'm gonna do my little Colin Robinson fun fact. He was in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, the one with Jack Nicholson. Okay. And he plays like this kid, kind of like he's probably like supposed to be 20 or 21 or something, who's, I think it was basically just that he's anxious, but like so bad that he has to be in a mental institution. And he does some of the same mannerisms.
Yeah.
Because he's really into women. He just doesn't really know how to like talk to women.
Yeah.
And so you see him like in the background sometimes when there's women in the scene, like being kind of just like unsettling. But you also know that he would like never touch them sexually because he can't do it.
Yeah.
You know, like it was just this weird fine line that he really nails.
Yeah.
Very, very well done performance.
Yeah.
Well, I love that we both were like sublime. Yes.
Yeah. Sublime. Like we know what sublime is.
Yes.
We know what that was.
That's like if you look up sublime in the dictionary, that is the picture right next to it.
The picture is just a tear coming down. Yeah. Grima Wormtongue.
Yes. Okay, so Sauron.
Well, you were I think I like kind of interrupted you, but you were like on the train of like Saruman like speech.
Oh yeah, I mean that pretty much summed it up.
Yeah.
But there is like the notion of, and I think it's more of like it's definitely a product of industrialization, but it's also very heavily like a capitalism kind of thing. This sense of like, I can't think of the word for it, but like I'll talk about the things that I was going to talk about with it. When he decides to just cut down Fangorn, thank you, Fangorn Forest for his production. I guess like the entitlement to nature.
Yeah.
But also his willingness to use the bomb. So they don't know how to get into, well, nobody's ever breached Helm's Deep, right? There's only a very small vent to the very bottom. That's the only way in and out if you can't get in through the front doors. And so like in the middle of Grima telling him about this, they pull out like a bomb, essentially.
Yeah.
The first bomb.
Gunpowder or whatever.
Yeah. And it reminded me of the conversation that we had in like around Rule of Wolves.
Yeah.
Where like once you create a weapon, you can't uncreate it. And he didn't have any hesitancy about using this dastardly weapon because as far as he knew, it achieved what he needed it to achieve. he didn't think about like the consequences of that single action. And so I think it like at that point it had really started to kind of cement that like I have argued, I think only a little while ago, but the way that the core almost of this war is the fight for industrialization. And part of that is also this fight towards like capitalistic entitlement on the side of like the evil side. The entitlement that you can own all of these people, that you can defeat all of them, that you can just like create this bomb, not think of the consequences, or cut down half of a forest, not think of the consequences, which they do pretty quickly get those consequences reaped because they get completely the last march of the Ents. Just that scene makes me cry.
Yeah.
Speaking of like battles that make me cry. But oh shoot, where was I going with that? Oh, so then you get like the other side of this because it's a war. So it's not just that they're fighting capitalism, but they have to have some like anti-entitlement, anti-kind of capitalist tendencies, right? There's the moment, and this is so small, there's the moment when Aragorn, they're in the stables and they're trying to like calm down
the horse,
yeah, and Aragorn talks to him for a minute because he can speak in Elvish, and he says, let this horse go, he's seen enough wars. He doesn't say, oh, promise not to take him to war, because if they keep the horse, they know that that's like not a promise that they can keep.
Yeah.
And so instead of still trying to possess this animal, he says that we need to free it. And I love that moment because it shows his willingness to like let nature be nature, as opposed to Saruman, who has decided to like turn on his oath, I assume he took when he became like the leader of the wizards. But like in my head,
he became head wizard.
Head boy. Well, he's like more or less like
he became leader. Head boy of the wizards.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like Treebeard talks about how like Saruman has turned basically on his oath to protect them by doing that. Because at that point it's not in his head something that he needs to protect, it's his. And if he doesn't want to protect it, if he wants to cut them down and use them, he fucking can. So
yeah, it's a big fight for power, because that's all Sauron is promising, really.
Yeah,
it's not like, oh, like you get to go, you get to go to Valinor and like live in this, it's like he's not promising great things other than just power and control over the land, essentially, and the people. Yeah.
And then isn't it that horse that finds Aragorn after he's like beached? So then you get like a very clear parallel between Saruman, who has torn down this forest and then dies at the Ent's hands, versus Aragorn, who promised to set him free, did, and then the horse finds him and saves him.
Yeah, it gives back.
Yep.
Yes. So the Ents, talk about the aesthetic of the 2000s. Everyone fucking wanted a tree tattoo because of this movie.
Yes.
I did. Yes. I didn't get one.
Thank God.
Thank God, yeah.
Yeah.
But I know
like
people
it's just
have
the
it, like,
tree of life.
The big tree, like everyone wants a tree. It's like, oh, the branches, like,
Now when I see those, I'm like, is this Lord of the Rings, or like are you a neo-Nazi that's like co-opted Norse mythology?
Yeah. All the people with tree tattoos are like, I love my tree tattoo. Yeah. You love your tree tattoo.
Yeah, I hope, I genuinely hope they do.
Yeah.
I really hope they still love it. But Treebeard is so...
It is very frustrating to hear him talk.
It is.
It is. Like,
there's something so Saturnian about him. I guess about the Ents in general, just kind of like this longevity. They've just like slept for so long because they could, because like they were just waiting. It's like we didn't really It's kind of like the line where he's
they're like, we've decided you're
saying,
hobbits.
like, I know every time I'm like, I expect it to be different, and it's that line.
Yeah.
And I feel Merry and Pippin's pain.
I think there's a extra scene in there where Pippin gets swallowed up by the branches.
Yes.
That's new.
They both do, yeah.
Yeah.
That's
because they're like eating lamb. I don't know. I can't remember. They're like
drinking. That's a whole added scene because they're drinking from the tree, and Treebeard was like, "That's that water. Don't."
Yeah.
But that scene is actually, I think the reason they cut that is because it's from book 1. It happens shortly after they leave Tom Bombadil's.
Right. It felt very Tom Bombadil to me. Like, just the scene just being very glowy and like.
Yes. Yeah. Because it's like the second time they see Bombadil is after they've like left his house and they take a nap and they kind of wake up and they've been eaten by these trees.
Yeah.
And then Bombadil comes over and he like uses his like green man magic.
Yeah.
And he's like, let them go. Spit it out. Like an owner with their dog, like, drop it.
Yeah.
Drop it.
Yeah.
And I think because it's the only time that like Treebeard ever kind of portrays that kind of behavior. So that's one of those scenes where like I can see why it was cut. It feels very out of place.
Yeah.
But his line when they discover that the forest has been cut down, because he's got that like, some of these trees were my friends. But the sentence that always gets me is when he says they had voices of their own. And like they just didn't listen to those voices. Like, oh, that breaks my heart. That absolutely breaks my heart. Because
who had voices of their own?
The trees that got cut down.
Oh,
when he goes onto the yeah,
because they all like howl. They're like kind of like wolf. There's like this kind of wolven like pack mentality.
Yes,
and I just love the whole I just was obsessed with this in high school. Like when I watched it, it was like just obsessed with the idea that like their roots could like communicate with other trees, like from like hundreds of miles away.
Okay.
They grown, like it's just like this such,
not to be like a 2021 like earthy bitch.
Do it.
But have you heard of the mycelial network?
No.
It is basically the like plant version of nerve networks, essentially, kind of like, for lack of a better word, between mushrooms all over the world.
Oh, yes.
The mycelium, like, that is like...
Yeah, I've heard of that, yeah.
Yes.
It's fucking nuts.
It is. It is.
Yeah.
And it's like the same kind of concept where it's like what we perceive to be consciousness is very biased to our own experiences of consciousness. When plants on like a different level are communicating with each other every day.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of like if we want to go really into it, the whole like, if the tree falls in the forest and you're not there, did it actually happen? Well, yes.
Yes.
It did to the tree.
Yes.
It allows, it's this amazing concept of realizing that shit's going on without you.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just.
It's so anthropocentric to think otherwise.
Yes, you are not the center of the universe. And also I just loved how like old they are. And I just remember that from the books, just like being like, there's this long history of the trees and like, and even, well, I don't know why Blue Planet keeps coming back.
There's a very environmentalist reading to this trilogy.
Absolutely. But there's that one, it's like the oldest tree that we know of, right? Yeah. In Canada, like somewhere up there. And it's just this massive tree. And of course they have drones and stuff that go up there. And it's like,
and they can't reveal his actual location because they're worried that people will like damage it. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, it's just like, it's just fucking crazy. Like that was there before people were.
Yep.
like a living tree thing. Like, yeah, I don't know. It was like, and so I also love, sorry, real quick. No, I also love like there's a word for it.
Let's do it.
Personifying, or just like the making and the animating.
Yes.
Of nature. There's a better word for it.
Yes, hold on.
Like,
I think I know what you're talking about. It's something like personifying, but like anthropomorphizing.
It's like making nature have consciousness, yes, like ours. And so for us to be able to like personify with it, I think, anyways, the whole essays have been written, I'm sure.
Yes.
About all of it.
Well, what I was just thinking is that, and if this happens in the book, that would be a little different. But at least in the movies, the only people that we see actually like physically interact with the Ents are the hobbits.
Mm-hmm.
And it's mentioned that Gandalf does. So we know that Gandalf can, but he is also Gandalf the White at this point.
Yeah.
Very powerful. Because there is kind of like the question of, could the orcs hear them actually screaming then? Like, are the hobbits just actually so much closer to nature than the orcs and man that they could actually communicate with them in a way that like man is just not capable of? Because when Gimli, Legolas, and Aragorn enter the forest, other than like the creaking and the groaning, the Ents don't really show their faces.
But there is the one scene, not that this necessarily trumps that theory. It might have just been a scene choice. But at the end, I think it's at the beginning of Return of the King, and it might have been an extended, when the battle is over.
Yeah.
And Treebeard is there talking to Gandalf and Aragorn and everyone.
I don't know how much he actually talks to the others, though.
Like, Treebeard's, you know what I mean? Talking.
Yeah. So he's talking. Yeah. And Gandalf is interacting. We know for sure that Gandalf is interacting.
Yeah, like, I don't know how much it's not clear, like, if anyone's really picking it up. But yeah, it's and I know Treebeard talking to like Saruman and stuff.
Yeah. But then again, where it's like,
so they're present.
Different beings. Yeah.
You would have to do a close.
Which, I mean, we're going to do soon. We're going to do that soon. I'll definitely pay attention to that, because I also like the idea that like there's this disconnect between them. And that's part of the reason that like they were able to do it, that the orcs were able to do that.
I guess Saruman would have enough wizard power to like understand, but because of his dissension, like maybe he's, but yeah, it's interesting.
But that scene in Helm's Deep, or why it's my favorite of the three.
Yeah. I also really love like the chase.
Yes.
Like, Legolas is always up front.
And Gimli's like, we do better at sprints.
Yeah. And
I'm wasted on cross country.
Yeah. Yeah. And they're just like tracking. And of course, and it's what's crazy is they were like using helicopters and shit. Like, how expensive that would have been. Now you just use like a tiny little.
You've got like drone. A track that like the camera just like slides along. And,
yeah, exactly. So
you use a drone.
And then you can tell when they do like dawn shots. It's really cool. And then like, what do your elven eyes see? And then when they like, that was really fun too, when they're like tracking and they would like listen to the ground.
Yes.
Like, and that's where like Aragorn's really like using
his ranger comes out.
You get to see the ranger a bit more.
Yeah. But I was just gonna say, I think that like the last, because there's the line that Treebeard has where just as like after he's called all of his friends and they're about to attack Isengard, and he's just like, hang on, tiny hobbits, you're about to see what might be the last march of the Ents. Oh, even like saying it, thinking about it, I'm getting like chills.
Yeah.
Because they all just like willingly, without question, it took them hours to just decide that they weren't orcs.
God, it makes you wonder how long the hobbits were with the Ents, like actually.
I know.
Like probably like a year.
I think in the books you get like more like intense fans, which I'm sure one day will be me, have made like timelines.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure they spend like an absurd amount of time.
Yeah, because they don't get a lot of scenes in the book because like there's just all of the politics and stuff going on, and there's really not much like, you know, percolation that needs to happen with their storyline because they have to talk about it for hours, right? Or months. So it's like you kind of get the idea like after scenes and scenes and scenes. Like I just remember being like in the theater and being like, oh yeah, like there's them too. Oh yeah, there's them too. Which now we're like kind of used to with Game of Thrones, there being so many different storylines, but that was kind of the first time where you're like, oh, the Fellowship is no longer together, so we gotta follow
like
them and them.
Three different tracks that we're following at this point. Yeah. But it took him a matter of minutes to rally up that army to defeat Isengard. All it took was like seeing that, and he knew that the others would be on his side to fight with them, to fight against them. And that's